But today's really is about the visualization of the company. And why is that important? And I would say to you that when Harry says write three things down, if I could share one thing that I would say that I would like you to take away from today's phone call. Oh, I'm sorry, let me hit mute. I don't know why always people like to unmute. Yeah. If I could say one thing that's important, it's not, I'd say that I learned that there's three things that make a company great. One is its vision, one is its idea, and one is its why. And today is not so much about you buying into those three things that you find here today. It's finding your own. You need your why. You need your vision. You need your idea. And the reason that you may resonate while you're here today is because we share the same one. And I'll say to you that the first time that I heard the most powerful why that stayed with me and actually in some ways changed the future of my career is when I met someone that you may have heard of, Mark Hughes, the founder of Herbalife. He was a New York kid, really good looking, charismatic, and had a vision about where he wanted to go in the future, but his vision didn't come only because he had an idea. His vision came when I went to go hear him speak at a party that I was invited to at his home with 3,000 people. And he got up and he didn't talk about that Herbalife was a great opportunity. He didn't talk about the science. He didn't talk about why this is the future of nutrition. He talked about that the reason he was here today is that his mom died from diet pills, struggling for 40 years about trying to lose weight, was so desperate that she died from an overdose of taking those pills. That's all I heard. That was his why. The vision was the company. The idea was a nutritional shake. But his why is something that I thought, can I find that why in my life? And I ask you the same thing. Can you find that why in yours? Because that's what happens of how you get over the tough times. That's how you get through your failures, because you know always what your why is. And Herbalife had many failures, right? In less than a year, they went from $2 million a month in sales, like every other company struggling in the marketplace, to $90 million a month in sales. Less than a year, because he had his why. But you know what also happened? The government didn't appreciate their growth, didn't appreciate their science, didn't appreciate their formulations. And 1 year later, they went from $90 million to back to $2 million a month in sales as they took on the government. And the reason they then went today to be a $5 billion company a year was because of their why. Now it's interesting. I then years later went to an Herbalife, and I never got involved. I actually became friends with Mark and actually was a consultant to him to help him behind the scenes run the business, because I was a talent agent at the time, the largest talent agency in the world, representing not only actors and actresses, but production companies. And at that very same party, he said to me, can you explain to me something? You know, what does a talent agent actually do? He goes, I don't really understand. I only know my business. And I said, I build relationships and I negotiate contracts. And he said, you know what? I have terrible relationships with my vendors and I have terrible contracts. Can I be your client? And I said, I don't know anything about your business. He goes, well, I don't know anything about yours, so we're even. He goes, but I have just a feeling about you. And so I did that. And that's how I got an education with Mark about that industry. But then I went to one of his standard Herbalife meetings that he wasn't there when I was trying to learn the business. And during that entire meeting, all they talked about was making money. All they talked about was the science. All they talked about the nutrition. They never talked about the why. And I actually thought, this is a business I don't really want to be involved in. Years later, I get a call from the top 2 distributors at Herbalife, who I became friends with, who went to go form their own company in Texas. And they had had a CEO who was running their company. And he left after 6 months because they were a mattress salesman and a carpet cleaner. And he thought, I'm not signing up to go work with these guys. And so they called me and to ask me if I would leave the entertainment business and help run their company. And I said to them, again, I don't even like your business, never mind understanding your business. And they said, but we need your help and you're the smartest guy we know. And I said, that's not a compliment. You don't know any smart people. They said, but still, so we negotiated a deal, and all of a sudden I go from representing famous actors and actresses to representing distributors. And I found them to be the same. I found that everyone was still trying to chase the brass ring, right? Whether actors and actresses chasing it for the first time or distributors chasing it for maybe the last time, everyone had a dream. Everyone had an idea. Everyone had a why, but they didn't have a vision. And I thought to myself, the reason I took the job is maybe I could be someone like Mark for these guys. That was my why at the time. 25 years later, $4 billion in sales, running a global international company, I think I made the right decision. So after I sold my last company, after 25 years, I became a consultant to all my old competitors. I always like to say to get even with them one more time, and that actually is true, and I actually enjoyed that. And then I opened up a technology company to be a better consultant. And lo and behold, I get a call out of the blue from Zoom, who was trying to go public and they wanted market share. And they thought my relationship with all the direct selling companies and all the CEOs could be a fast track for them to get as many licenses as possible. And I said, I didn't work this hard to be a Zoom reseller. I said, but if I could own the customers, if I could build the experience, if I could bring my creativity and innovation, I said, I'm in. And we both made the right decision. Again, I became the largest ISV partner to Zoom in the world for about 4.5 years. Until, as I like to say, I had my arrogant or ignorant moment where I go to Eric and Zoom, who's the owner, and I said, I think I know how Zoom can do it better. They said, great, but we're not interested in doing it better. We're interested in the way we're doing it. And so they never expected me to walk away from our contract, go into litigation to do that, and decide to compete with them instead of partner. So Scott, I just want you to know that's how we got here today, with my why, my vision, and my idea. And what that is, very simply, is that I've seen people make the best presentations in the world. And every time they did on a Zoom, you know what happened? Absolutely nothing, because they couldn't touch the screen. No one could enroll in a product. No one can purchase a product. No one could sign a contract. No one can share the screen. And that was this general idea that I thought was so big, I thought was so important. And then I also had the vision or the idea that it shouldn't be limited to webinars. Why not do it in text? Why not do it in emails? Why not do it in social media broadcasting? So we went from a Zoom alternative to a touchpoint platform that any single time you reach out and touch someone exactly the way you want, that action can happen in the moment. I thought, and I still believe today, and so does our team, that that's as transformational as going from the Motorola flip phone, where you can make only a phone call and a text, to the smartphone, right? And so that's the mission we're improving. And I would also say to you that we've never even opened yet. Why today's call is so important about the vision, I want to share something with you, right? We haven't introduced our best product, our best version on our best day. That's what's going to be happen come the fall, come September 1st. We started out with a very simple premise of we're going to be an interactive platform. Then my failure as a CEO, which took us about 16 months to build, was not recognizing AI is taking over the world. And everyone was doing AI in a small way, talking about it, but I didn't see it for what it was. And I went to our team after working for 16 months. And I said to them, guess what, guys? Vision's changed. And we have a choice. We can build AI on top of our platform, or we could be as bold in our decision as we were when we started this company and rebuild it from scratch, even though we haven't even launched yet. I can tell you they weren't that excited about the idea. But that's why I've worked with them for 6 years, because they're the team that takes my idea, takes my vision, because they believe in our why, and they went to work and for feverishly for what they did in 16 months to do it in 6 months. And the culmination of that is what you're going to see in about a week. The culmination of that is what Roger pointed out earlier, which was the final piece of the puzzle, which was the CRM. So I know that we like to say that expression, you've seen nothing yet. I can tell you that you really haven't. You really haven't, in the sense of we will be the computer now that says hello, right? So it's very clear, right, where we started, where we are, but also where we're going. I see the platform so much more than it is even when we launch next week. And imagine, I'm saying, having an AI agent work for you, that when you send an interactive text, it's still selling after the text is over. Imagine coming into a platform and you have no one to talk to. And we have the technology that can provide that as well. So the future of where we're going, of being truly a touch point conversion platform, even though we're launching that, I would say, in a very short period of time, it's only the beginning in that perspective. So the other thing that's always critical, right, is for people to experience the platform. Because I don't care how much I explain this, right? We all know, who've been on this call today, that if they don't experience the platform, they don't understand it. And one of the ways that I help people experience the platform, right, is to invite them to demos or to have special guests. And so I wanted to have a special guest explain our why, our vision, and idea. And yesterday I was struggling with who could that be? Who could say it better than me? And I thought, you know what? The truth is, no one can. So my special guest today that I'm going to share with you right now is our platform. And it's me speaking about our platform that you guys can sort of have as a takeaway. So here we go.
When you start a company, everyone wants to know what your vision is, how it came to be, and where it will take you. It helps people understand who you are, what drives you, and helps them decide if they want to be a part of it. When I was growing up, my mother would sometimes read me stories at night, Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood, and sometimes she would read me biblical stories like Noah and the Ark and Samson and Delilah. And they all seemed equally scary to me. But the one story I always remembered was when I was told the very first words spoken by God to man were, "Let there be light." Not because I was religious, but maybe because I was afraid of the dark. I am still not sure. But as I got older, I grew to understand we weren't talking about the light in the sky, but shedding light on each other with heartfelt thoughts, intellect, and understanding through our ability to communicate. And maybe that's why I have been trying to shed the light and be a great communicator ever since. And when you look back at the history of how we communicate, we have come a long way from just the spoken word. We have gone from only our own voice to writing on stone, then paper, to the printing press, which of course led to books. Then we first went wired with the telegraph and telephone. But then everything changed. We discovered mass communication with the movies, radio, television, and then moved on to digital with mobile phones, texting, the internet, emails, webinars, and eventually social media. So what is next? I believe it's Pxch, and let me tell you why. If you notice, almost all of these forms of communication I mentioned are still being used and evolving today. Whether it was going from AM to FM, black and white to color, texting to SMS, websites to social media sites, social media to podcasts, no one is going away or sitting on the sidelines. But Pxch is the only company today positioned to transform all of them simultaneously into a real-time, anytime, interactive experience. That is our vision. Not to be tied to one platform, but to transform them all as dramatically as the invention of each one itself. What company today is even considering this approach? Yes, other companies are considering their own strategies and can zoom with a buy button, but they are thinking features. We are creating an experience. That is why the vision was never to be simply an alternative webinar platform, but to be a local, global, multi-language, multi-touchpoint platform that not only helps people to share the light, but also be able to light the fire under your prospects, whenever and however your message is delivered. Every company has its own vision, and visions change sometimes along with the times. But I believe the companies that succeed and go beyond their own expectations are because their why never changes, just the vision on how to execute it. Our why here at Pxch is not driven by the impact we believe our technology can have on the millions of people who will soon be using our platform, but our why is driven by the impact they have on us. We feel their impact every time we do a demo, every time they log on and create an experience they couldn't have had before Pxch. That's what makes us get up in the morning and do the work we have to do to execute our vision. That's our algorithm. That's our inspiration. That's our why. That's Pxch.
All right. Thank you, everybody.